It's a bright Sunday morning, and I'm happy to see so many people ready to listen to our keynote speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce Abhay Singhal, who's our first keynote speaker. Abhay is a co-founder of InMobi Group and the CEO of InMobi Marketing Cloud, a company whose mission is to power intelligent mobile-first experiences on connected devices. Abhay drives the company's global business, enabling the world's leading brands to reach over 1.3 billion people in over 190 countries. Amazing. Prior to his current role as CEO, he was Chief Revenue Officer and Head of Human Resources at InMobi. During his time as CRO, Abhay drove record revenue growth globally across China, APAC, and the US markets, helping InMobi to be recognized as one of the 50 most disruptive companies by both CNBC and MIT Review. Abhay received his bachelor's degree from IIT Kanpur. He is based in San Francisco Bay Area. Great, Abhay, it's just so impressive, introduction, which everybody will be very happy to read, and it has been my pleasure to welcome you. So, Abhay Singhal, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Shyam, and thank you, Apurva, for such a warm welcome, and good morning and good evening to everyone. I hope you can hear me, and I'll be just trying to share my slide. Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Abhay, and I am one of the co-founders of InMobi. As many of you are aware, as many of you may be aware, InMobi Group comprises of three main businesses, but primarily in two big categories. We run a US first business, which is primarily a software platform, which enables programmatic advertising for many users and advertisers and publishers at scale. And the second business of ours, which is powering the consumer internet, which is very Asia first business that comprises of two big brands, Glance and Reposo. And both of them are amazingly at scale platform. Glance is the top 10 consumer platform, and Reposo is in the process of becoming the TikTok of India. My talk today has primarily three chapters, and each chapter has about 4 key messages. And I hope to be able to deliver them in the next 30 minutes. It's a story that started back in 2007 from our humble beginnings of what was then called as M-Code. M-Code's mission was to help consumers discover great deals on their mobile phone. And as you can see, we all started with SMS as the primary medium, and then evolved from an SMS to mobile web. Just to remind everyone, this was before this event even happened. And this is an event that probably changed the entire direction of how the last decade or last 2 decades of digital world and information consumption has gone. Now, this is one chart that probably depicts the journey over the last 10, 12 years of mobile. 2008, when Apple App Store launched in July, and this primarily shows that in that year, we saw about 300 million apps downloaded from the Apple App Store. And 2020, the year just gone by, we've seen 218 billion apps being downloaded on the App Store. That's I don't know how many X growth in the in the market space, but it has been probably one of the biggest fundamental shifts in the last 10, 15 years. Probably very similar to the shift about the entire SaaS industry or a cloudification industry, where the way consumers have been accessing the internet has changed fundamentally. And InMobi has been an organization that has literally grown as this trend has grown over the last 12, 13 years. Now, what are some of the lessons learned, or the lessons that could be very, very relevant for the audience that is accumulated here? The lesson number one, dream big. I think all of you have seen this. But how to know it is big? And our simple mantra has been that if you are too scared to say it loud, for nothing else but for the fear of being labeled as crazy, then it is big enough. Until then, it is probably average. The story that probably comes to my mind to talk about it is, I will go probably all the way back to 2008. InMobi or India was still known as a massively large services economy. We had large companies such as Infosys, TCS, multiple different companies running large global services business. But there wasn't one single software product company out of India, or for that matter, even out of Asia, that was as large as we would want that to be. And that was our dream. That dream was very, very crazy. We hadn't seen any example of any company that had come out of Asia until then. And it was a dream that was probably very naive. It was driven out of our naivety as an entrepreneur. It was a dream that came out of our belief that the mobile is going to be extremely global. And it was a little bit of dogmatic attitude that if not us, then who else? But it always remember that the dream has to be large enough. Because if the dream isn't large enough, then the reality will always be a subset of what you're dreaming. The second example, or the second lesson, in the world where we are living in, we have to think global from the day one. And in fact, InMobi took a very, very different approach. We grew east to west. I'll take you back to 2008, 2009 time frame. Back then, the conventional wisdom was that to be able to grow your businesses, you should have your resources or manpower and cost center in India and be selling into the US. That was typically the conventional wisdom, because US is a large market and customers have much bigger paying power. In fact, in InMobi's journey, InMobi did not launch in the US until 2015. For the first 7 years of InMobi's journey, we grew from India to Southeast Asia, to Japan, to China, to Europe, and then we entered US. Now, why was it so? In retrospective, it actually, it all fits very well. In the US, where internet revolution had already happened on the desktop, the digital economy was already massively large. But back home in Asia, the internet economy was actually taking place on mobile as the device. On mobile economy was the one which was bringing the consumers to experience the internet for the very first time. And we saw those experiences grow for the very first time. In fact, for the first 6-7 years in InMobi, we had no idea how to even connect with desktop-based experiences or the desktop-based advertising, because that just didn't matter to us. And somewhere, if I look back, that 6-7 years that we spent in honing our skills on becoming the best in mobile helped us grow tremendously from a global perspective. The third big lesson that we learned is beginnings are the time frame where one needs to build bold people principles. I think you all may have read that, while you're hiring, put attitude before smarts, before skills. But one thing that we've learned in our journey of last 12, 13 years is that never, ever, ever give up on a person with the right attitude. Doesn't matter how successful they are or how failed they are, the attitude of a person is someone that is going to help you in your company's growth or whatever at all periods of time. And we have numbers of examples. In fact, InMobi has been a company which has probably one of the highest retention rate of employees of all the contemporaries in the ecosystem. And that has been primarily because of the people who come in and invest their time and energy, and they grow within our own ecosystem. Probably one most important lesson that we learned in our journey is maximize the relationship currency as you build the company over the period of time. Now, these are 4 pictures of the co-founding team of InMobi all the way back from 2009, running into 2020. We've all lived with just one principle, that we want to maximize our relationship currency. And every time I see many different founding teams and many different entrepreneurship experiences, I talk to many of these founders who are sort of having the struggle dealing with their co-founding chemistry, their co-founding relationship. And to all of them, I would tell one thing, that just invest on one thing, which is to maximize the relationship currency. At the intensity at which you are operating and building the organization, you will see each other's flaws and gaps probably way more than anybody else can. Figure out mechanisms how you want to live with each other despite of those flaws. And you will see that in the next chapter of our journey as to why and how this multi-founder team actually comes to a huge rescue in building large, scalable organization. In fact, if there is one lesson that I want all of you to take from today's talk, is having a multi-founding team is a good thing, not a bad thing. Just that we need to figure out how to make that whole relationship work. And InMobi is a prime example of getting it working. If we go to the second chapter is about the grind. The grind that probably made us a company that will live here for arguably forever. A company that has become even bolder, a company that has become even stronger. As it happens with many organizations, somewhere late 2015, early 2016, we had many of these things happen to us at the same point in time. Delayed funding, some loss of customers, some changes in the ecosystem. Reasons don't matter. What matters is that we hit a pretty rough patch in our journey, and we probably had only very few months or weeks of fuel left in the organization to sustain. And remind you, we were organization at scale. We had over 700 people at that point in time. We had several $1 million of business that we were doing. We were fairly global at that approach. So it wasn't like a relatively smaller company. It was a sizable mass, and we literally came face to face with probably becoming one of the biggest public failures in India's entrepreneurship journey. And that time, one of the most important realization happened. Do you know what's worse than a failed startup? It is to become a zombie startup. A zombie startup that doesn't know where it is headed. A zombie startup which is just somehow barely trying to survive, and a zombie startup that is somehow finding the next day's fuel and living in an extremely short-term way. How do we know this? prior to InMobi, I ran one such startup. And we delayed the process of letting that startup fail by letting it become a zombie startup. And it was probably one of the most painful periods that I lived in my own journey. So the choices that was in front of us at that point in time were, do we narrow our focus or do we expand more? Do we become short-term? Do we become long-term? Do we conserve the cash or do we invest further? And just remind you, we were probably 5-6 months away from running completely dry. In fact, we chose the path which is mentioned on the right side. We expanded more. We became more long-term focused. We invested more in our growth. Net, we ran faster towards our debt. And it wasn't an easy decision. There were countless hours of all night outs where we were trying to figure out what is to be done, what is not to be done, and so on and so forth. And in the end, the decision that was made is that if we're going to go away, let's go away by executing way more faster than what we would do otherwise. There's a huge principle that we've learned. The wartime leadership requires one to draw on the accumulated trust in the system. And if you rely on that trust that has been accumulated in the organization during the building phases, your people won't let you die. So remember, if you are investing in building people and investing in building the organization from the primary currency of trust, when you need that trust to come and help you in changing the path of the organization, your people will come in front of you and your own apparent death at that point in time. And that turnaround that InMobi did in the next 3 months was probably something which has been written in golden words. We had to let our people go. It wasn't that it was all hunky dory. And I have probably cried every night for probably weeks at a time, because every time we had somebody let go, it almost felt like that a piece of heart was going. And the way we went about is evident from the fact that probably 70% of the people that were let go at that period of time all ended up returning back to InMobi over the next 2 to 3 year period. One other important point, just remember the point that I mentioned about attitude. It is critical that you put attitude first. Why that's important is for this slide. You will need to reinvent, and you will need to reinvent faster than what you can imagine. InMobi did many things over the next probably 2-3 years. We ran from one roadmap, we ran 3 country-wise roadmap. Our US roadmap became different, our China roadmap became different, our India roadmap became different. This was the time when InMobi Glance was launched. So from a B2B company, we actually became a B2C company as well. We ended up doing the cloudification of our entire stack. Prior to 2016, our entire stack was running on owned and operated infrastructure with our own data center. And we took one of that most monolithic piece of software, and over probably next 2-3 years, we ended up cloudifying our entire infrastructure and ended up moving over Azure and converted our CapEx into OpEx. One other principle that we learned during that process is alignment before structure or restructure. The amount of time that the team spent on aligning different pieces of the organization was time well spent. In fact, one of the things that we learned during that period of time, and we sort of follow it even till date, we have this term called as GMs of business unit. Now, GMs of this business unit are people who have ownership to get something done, but they do not have any org structure that enables them to get this done. These are the people who are InMobi first, leading from the attitude first and getting shit done kind of people. These people do not really depend on the right org structure to get any execution done. And those are the people that we've sort of held extremely close to us as founding team. Because those are the people who have always come to our rescue whenever we needed anything in terms of the reinvention. And then the lesson that we learned in that process was also that we learned to live on the edge. This is something I think probably very familiar to everyone. I think we as entrepreneurs, we always live on the edge. For the next 3 years, probably the journey that started in 2016 probably went all the way to 2019, and then 2020 when we started to probably, leave a big sigh of relief because business had turned around. It had started to massively grow, and we all started to take a sigh of relief. Just then COVID hit, and we had to sort of reinvent ourselves. But what we learned in this whole journey is that the difference between success and failure is your perspective. I don't think the world heard a lot about InMobi during those 3-4 year period. We were pretty much written off as an organization. Nobody knew what we were doing. We weren't the cool kids trying to build a global business. There were some strong PR articles that came out that literally wrote us off as the organization. And we realized that if we're going to start living by others' perspectives, then someday or the other we will, others' perspectives, someday or the other we will always be a failure, or some point in time will be a failure. So we ended up learning a pretty big lesson that we need to draw from our own strength and our own beliefs and take the progression as the success rather than somebody else's interpretation. And that was something that has served us extremely well. We came out of that grind as 3 major units. InMobi, which is InMobi Marketing Cloud, which is an extremely large business at scale. Glance, which probably all of you would have heard about. It is a app that lives on your lock screen. And then probably we have 150 million daily active users in India and Southeast Asia. And Gruposo, which is in the process of becoming the TikTok of India. Not only these 3 companies, during this grind, we ended up acquiring 2 companies in the US. One is AirServe and one is Pinsight. And both of these are very, very successful US first organizations that we ended up not only acquiring, but integrating well within our overall story. Now the chapter 3, where are we sort of headed from here? What are we up for as we go in terms of our business and the growth of that business? There are few things that we are focused on quite a lot. One of which is how do we scale our culture? InMobi is known as an organization that has always had people first principles. If you take on 2 axes, an axis where you have culture which is very family-led culture, and on the same axis on the other side, you can have a culture of a pro team, a pro-US team culture, which was popularized a lot by Netflix and some of the other companies in the Silicon Valley. Uh, we are extremely comfortable with the culture that we've been able to create, which derives a lot from our values of family system, our values of trust, our values of taking people along, our values of not leaving anybody behind in the growth. And as we go along, as we grow from, in fact, right now InMobi is probably about 2,000 people across 2,000 homes now, but back when we had offices across about 25, 27 different offices. So with that many scale of people, which comes from about 25 different nationalities, how does one scale that culture to empower the organization to move faster? That we're in the process of discovering that journey, and hopefully this journey will give number of stories that we'll be able to come and talk as we go and build it. The second, remain invested in people forever. For some of you who may have had the opportunity to visit InMobi offices in Bangalore, this is one of the screens or one of the walls in InMobi. It has, at that point in time, this wall was created in 2018. It has name of every InMobian who was there at that point in time. Now, of course, this will probably need 4 times of this wall size or 3 times of this wall size to capture everyone's name. But this remains a symbol of our values forever. Not only, you don't only invest in a person when he's part of your company, you also invest in the person when he's gone and when he's trying to become somebody else. There has been about 60 startups that have come out of InMobi, and we have continued to remain invested in their growth in more ways than one. In fact, many of those startups don't even leave InMobi in their first year. We created a specific space in the office. They continue to work there. They continue to remain part of InMobi system. And as and when they feel it's appropriate, they decide to leave and take the flight further. And it's been a process which has enabled us to create these relationships that hopefully will serve us for our life. Remember, it's relationship maximization is the principle, or relationship currency maximization is the principle with which we all live. The third, we are becoming even bolder. It's not often that the company that comes out of India and an Indian heritage can reach where we have reached. We are extremely humble and thankful to everyone who's played their part in the picture. But then it's picture abhi baki hai mere dost. As we go along from here, our competition is with these large global organizations. Our competition is with the large B2C companies. Our competition is with the Instagrams and the Googles and the Snapchats and all the other large B2C companies that have created significantly large ecosystems to take consumers, not only take consumer share of time, but also convert the consumer share of time into large economic value for their advertisers and their customers. How does InMobi sort of reinvent itself to probably become one of those companies or someone at that same scale is a vision that we have, and hopefully we have all the right ingredients to be able to imagine that future. And most importantly, as founders, we've learned that this is our life. And this is our life that we're going to be living forever. There has been, for probably 7-8 years, the first 7-8 years in Mobi's journey, I personally told myself at all points in time, let me work hard now. There will be a time to enjoy later on. And then every year I tell myself, yes, there will be a time to enjoy later on. Yes, there will be a time to spend times with my kids and with my wife, with my family, with everyone. And I realized one thing, that time probably is never going to come. In fact, I don't want that stage to come where there is a life post InMobi. If I don't figure out a way to live my life along with InMobi, I would probably be hugely unsatisfied one way or the other in the end. So the promise that is being made to me personally, and in fact many other people that I have interacted with in the last few years, that develop your mechanism to embrace this as your life. It is something that you will live. It is something that will be challenging, yet enjoyable. And if you think that the pace is ever going to slow down, it's never going to happen. So this is your life. Learn to enjoy it. Learn to live with it, and learn to make an impact and continue to make impact. So with that, thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and hopefully InMobi's journey will continue to inspire a generation of entrepreneurs to dream big, and dream big in a manner where they deliver real impact to humanity and the social life of everyone. Thank you very much.
Much, Abhay, for this.
Thank you, Abhay. I think a fascinating storytelling by you. I think it's a story of audacity and perseverance, and a story which each and every IIT Kanpur person will be very proud of. Thank you very much for giving such a great presentation today, Abhay. Thank you, and I wish all the best. And I have no doubt that the other competition whom you have now visualized should be in some way start to get worried about you guys. And and we're all looking forward to a successful IPO, which you have gone in the press as saying that you will do shortly, and there's a lot of money, but and pray for success for all of you.
Thank you, Shyam, and wishing you all best, and have a good life, and stay blessed and stay safe. I know that the things are not that good, but I hope and pray for everyone's safety and success in life. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.